Welcome back to Future², everyone. Today I'll be bringing you Paul R. Williams. He has over 20 years of project, program, and portfolio management leadership experience within IT, innovation management, and strategic business initiatives in the investment banking, insurance, legal, manufacturing, and professional services industries. Mr. Williams is credited with being one of the pioneers of visual project management, a revolutionary new approach for leveraging visual thinking and communication strategies in project management practice. He's been featured in a number of worldwide publications, including 3 appearances in PM Network, the official monthly periodical of the Project Management Institute. He's author of 3 books on innovation and project management, and is a frequent speaker on project and innovation management topics at conferences and media events across the United States. He's also a founder and administrator of the Innovation Management Group on LinkedIn, which boasts over 33,000 members. So without further ado, I bring you Paul R. Williams. 2, 1. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and you're joining us all the way from sunny Green Bay, Wisconsin.
It actually is finally sunny, and there's no more snow on the ground, so we're all quite thankful.
Well, that's good to hear. Good to hear. And being from Green Bay, no doubt you're a big Packers fan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're born here, I think it's you have to be a Packers fan by law. So it's something that you really have no choice in if you're born and raised here.
Yeah, I imagine they issue you with a Green Bay Packers membership at birth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they put you on the waiting list for the season tickets as soon as you're born, and you may get them by the time you retire.
Oh, that's great. And I know you're into your fishing and bird hunting. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I like to do. When the weather's halfway decent, get out and fish, and just the stuff that kind of clears your mind and lets your mind wander. Those are the kind of things I like to do. You're so busy all the time with work and things. I love the activities where you can actually take a deep breath and just let the mind wander for a while. So those are things that are kind of no-brainer. Just let the body do the thing and start thinking through some stuff. So yeah, those are the kind of relaxation activities, I guess you'd call them, I like to do.
Yeah, fantastic. Have you managed to get out onto a lake recently, or?
It'd probably be this weekend will be the first weekend I actually get the boat out and get some fishing done. I've heard it's starting to pick up now that the weather's getting better, so hopefully we'll tie into one or two.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to seeing some snaps maybe pop up on LinkedIn of you with the big fish.
There you go.
But yeah, what you said was interesting as well about getting out into the lake and doing away with the noise of the world. I think that's when we get into that flow state, and we're more likely to come up with ideas in that type of environment than we are in the time-boxed sort of brainstorming environment, and we're surrounded by 20 other people with the pressure to come up with revolutionary ideas.
Yeah, and when I speak on topics with people about innovation and being creative, and it's the one thing I tell people the most is you really, if you have to schedule it, but if you don't give your mind time to catch up with some of the ideas and some of the problems you've been assigning your subconscious, it's just never going to happen. So whether you do it by scheduling time inside your day to have a little downtime, or you wake up that hour early, or you have a hobby where you can kind of forget about the day-to-day grind. Those are things, if you really want to be a good innovator, a good creative problem solver, you just have to do it because it's how it works. And so you just have to follow the normal biological process of how that all works.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more, Paul. I try to practice not looking at my phone or my email for the first 2 to 3 hours of the day. Get up early, go work out, do all that type of thing, and you find you just tap into different reserves of mental energy that otherwise wouldn't present themselves if the first thing you did was check your email, and then you're just at the mercy of other people's demands on your time.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
So you recently released a new book. It's your 3rd book, Visual Project Management. Can you care to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so a lot of the work that I do for clients and part of the consulting business that I do is what I like to call at the intersection of project and innovation management. So I'm more of the back end of innovation kind of guy, strategic execution kind of thing.
Right.
And so a lot of my actual career history has been in sort of a combination of being a project manager and an innovation manager, a product manager. So one of the things that has really been lacking in the project management world is the transition from text-based status reporting and just data communication to sort of a more visual, easy to understand, very quick to digest kind of concept. The project management world, for whatever reason, is stuck in these 3-page brutal text-based status reports, and you have meetings where you just basically look through, somebody reads through a slide deck of bullets. And so I did some research, and my contention is, we need to drag project management along with the data visualization and the big data world, and start giving our project stakeholders information that they can quickly digest, quickly understand, make decisions on. So I basically just, the whole premise of the book is, okay, how can we take traditional project type status reporting or other kinds of project-based communications and truly build out a visual model. So I honestly, I break it all the way down. I have a chapter on nothing but drawings and sketches and why those things are appropriate in certain parts of the project lifecycle, all the way up through real complex dashboards and infographics. So what I'm really trying to do is re-educate project management professionals in just a different way of thinking about how they communicate and how to do that in a more visual and graphical based format to essentially drag the profession into the 21st century where our executives already are. They're already getting this kind of data from IT. A lot of the data services stuff that happens in these corporations now are built on these big data, data visualization rich formats. And so project management needs to kind of come along. And in some of those, there are actually innovation management things that we already use in a graphical format that I think are important and useful for project management professionals as well. So that's really what the premise of the book was. This was to essentially bring some of the flavor of some of the work we already do as innovation management professionals to the project management profession and try to get us thinking more along the lines of easy to understand, easy and quick to digest information.
Sure, no, that makes sense. And are you able to perhaps elaborate on what some of those innovation management tools or infographics or graphical representations are and how they can be applied to the back-end project management side of things?
Sure. One of the things that I do a lot with organizations that struggle with how do I place the right bets in the right buckets as far as, how much money do I spend on incremental type improvements to existing product lines versus maybe towards a breakthrough type innovation, and how do I dedicate and split that time? So one of the things that I use in the project management world obviously is sort of a portfolio management approach, and you can apply that using a kind of a 2x2 grid or a bubble chart to show where you would put projects based on their impact and or cost or whatever to the organization, and you can do that at an innovation or strategic level. So of the projects we have in our portfolio, the investments that we're going to make in this organization for our future, how many of those projects are in the quadrant that is, we're just keeping the lights on, we're just sustaining ourselves, versus how many are really sort of out there bets of, we don't really know for sure if they'll catch on, but if we don't do something, we're going to fall behind. And use that kind of visual representation of, okay, are we really putting enough of our effort and are we really launching enough projects in the right quadrants based on our strategic profile of where we want to be? So that's just kind of one example of something that kind of crosses both worlds. But it's a very effective tool that people kind of forget about. But it really helps them focus in on, are we making the right investments in the right places?
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting point you make there, Paul, because a lot of people struggle with this question of incremental or Horizon 1 innovation through to your breakthrough or Horizon 3 innovation. And oftentimes there is this rule of thumb that, 70% on your incremental innovation, 20% on your adjacent or Horizon 2 innovation, and then 10% on disruptive. But that is just a general rule of thumb. So what you're suggesting is that these frameworks in visual project management actually help us better allocate capital to those three buckets.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. And then there's even just basic rudimentary tools that project managers aren't used to using, but those of us in the innovation management space who are really active in the creative problem-solving area, take root cause tools, for example, the 5 whys, the fishbone kind of thing.
Yeah.
These are things that project managers really don't think about or use it, unless there's a specific problem that's nagging their project so bad they're just reaching out for any kind of tool they can find to help them. But those are the kind of things that those of us in the innovation management space, we're used to using those kinds of things all the time. So that's why I said it's kind of a flavor of my experience in both, and kind of mashing them together to kind of bring both audiences together.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I guess to me it sounds like, well, I guess you can answer this question. Would you say that Agile project managers are more likely or less resistant to adopt these types of approaches, given they're already using things like burn up charts, burn down charts, etc.?
Yeah, there's no question. There's a standard project management methodology for a lot of the waterfall type approaches, and again, for certain projects, waterfall is absolutely perfect.
Of course,
but there's a rigid set of agreed upon tools and methodologies and techniques that you use, and so the Agile world, they're more looking about how do I bring things to scale, how do I speed things up, how do I work on the things that are most important today, how do I ease the process of change management so it's not so painful. So those are the people that are truly looking for the new breakthrough, maybe not such a traditional kind of tool, that are looking. They're basically grabbing tools and putting it in there. This is the reference I like to use a lot, and it's what I think makes a project manager a great project manager, or an innovation manager for that matter, is you grab the tools from anywhere you find it and you put it in your personal toolbox, and you only grab the tool that you need for the job that you're trying to do.
Correct.
And you don't stick to a methodology just because that's the methodology they tell you to use. You use the right tool for the job, and you're not going to know what tool may be more appropriate unless you look outside your own sphere of influence, or your own industry, or your own kind of company. And that's where I think that this sort of cross-industry, cross-profession kind of view is so helpful, is because you look across at a manufacturing, somebody involved in Lean Six Sigma, and you think, wow, that's not really great for innovation. But you know what? There's a lot of great tools that are used by innovation folks that were born in that Six Sigma world, and unless you're willing to go out and look and try them out and see where they might be most applicable, you'll never know that you may not have the best tool in your toolbox.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. It's kind of like I wouldn't say a just-in-time, but more a modular sort of approach to the application of tools to project management. And I think the rest of the world is also moving in that direction as well, whether it's education or media, the way we consume things. It's all about, okay, what do I need right now? What media do I want to consume right now? What education do I need to learn right now in order to help me perform better in this particular field, or to get this job, or et cetera, et cetera. And we're moving.
Right. It's kind of a hybrid now. It's a hybrid of a bunch of collection of tools from all over the place.
Exactly. And I think a lot of those traditional project management frameworks, and you hit the nail on the head earlier, sometimes waterfall is absolutely perfect for, particularly your Horizon 1 incremental stuff that's been done before a million times. There's very, very little unknowns. But, I think the world is moving so quickly that in order to just apply let's say a silver bullet framework, it's probably going to have mixed results.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, even the a standard Agile methodology, it can still be pulled apart, and not you have to use all of the tools, or you don't. You just have to be you have to be methodology agnostic, but tool specific is kind of like that's the view that I usually take to things.
Yeah, that makes sense. And do you have an example of where an organization has adopted, say, the visual sort of project management approach, and what the benefit of that was?
Yes, I do. So I've worked with a few organizations. A couple of them I can't talk about because I'm actually under contract with them right now. But what I will tell you, so I'll tell you the industry that they're in. So there is a large packaged goods company that I work with that has transferred. They've asked me essentially to come in and take anything that they have that's text-based and work with the project management office and try to figure out a way to break it all down to a one-pager. Now, some of the things that we've done, we've had to make the one page larger than a regular sheet of paper, so we may go from a U.S. letter to an 11 by 17 to keep it on the one page. Yeah. But so we've kind of cheated a little bit. But essentially, what the executives asked us to do is to come in and basically break the habit, or break the rule that says I can only communicate with you using words and the colors red, yellow, green. And so because what they really want to be able to do is to take the information that they get and look at it, glance at it, get the gist of what that information is, and then use that information quickly to either make a decision or to do something with that information. So we've been putting together dashboards, and we started out really simple. We just basically, these are nothing more than prettied up Excel spreadsheets using just the graphical features there. And it was to really basically figure out, what do you want to see? We've had a lot of meetings with stakeholders of what's important to you. What's the kind of information you need to make the decisions you make on what kind of investments you want to make in your portfolio, or the health of the project, or the overall risk spread across the portfolio, not just on a per project level. So we had a lot of interviews. We had a lot of discussions around what is the valuable data, and then we tried to break down each one of those data points and say, how best would we display that data so it's very intuitive, it's very quick to understand. And then we started to say, okay, can we assemble all of these things into a single dashboard, or do we need to have a master dashboard that if you click on something, you dive to the next layer down, and if you're interested in the specific data table or the actual points of the data, you can even click to go a layer deeper. And so now you're talking about tools that are specifically around designing dashboards, or some kind of graphical interface. This project is also that I'm working on with this client is also starting to take the shape of they have a lot of project-based communication that goes outside to vendors or key customers. And so now they're thinking about, instead of providing them with these kind of real marketing looking kind of almost, again, they're kind of heavily text based, and they're almost like a flyer.
Yeah.
What they're looking more now to do is kind of an infographic, so that you're not limited to the flyer, the PDF one page thing. It's a singular flow of information that we're communicating. So I'm working with them on that. The other very cool thing that I've done with another client is they brought me in to work on designing a war room for them. For a project perspective. They got a very, very large project, and part of in my visual project management book, space is a visual tool. So you can set up a war room where you co-locate people, and then you thematically use wall space and whiteboard space and table space to show visual information, so that if you walk into a room, you should be able to look at the walls or look at what's being presented and understand where the project is, what they're working on. So those are kind of examples of where companies are going. And again, it's all about executives don't have time to read status reports or look at complex things or have you explain to them what you're trying to convey, right?
Yeah.
So they just want a quick, simple, let me make the decision and let me move on to the next thing. And so they're really, what I'm finding is the people who are engaging with me are at the executive level saying, help me break through to my PMO or my marketing team and say, look, we are now changing things. We're going to change the way you're doing things, and Paul's coming in to help you do that because I need you to make the change. That's where the big drivers are coming from.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I think we've gone full circle to what we were talking about earlier about being out on the lake and your head's clear. And if you're presenting senior executives with clear, simple, easy to understand reports where they can process their thoughts quickly, but they're also making better decisions. Because if you've got these 3-page text-based bullet point reports, it's going to be hard for them to make good decisions. So they're not only making quicker decisions, but better decisions. And then you're tying that into the communication with clients, and therefore you're going to get better feedback, better input, and ultimately deliver better benefits realization at the end of the process. Yeah,
absolutely. And again, it all starts with that first sessions of conversations with the stakeholders of, I can give you 1 million data points, but until you tell me the 5 or 6 that you use to make your decisions, those 1 million data points are going to overwhelm you. So let's have a conversation on what's important for you, how you want it best displayed, and then let's build it from there rather than I'm just going to pick a template and this is the information you get and you're just going to have to like it. I mean, that world is gone now.
Yeah.
So we have to be much more responsive and much more flexible around. And you know what? From one stakeholder to another, that it may be different, and so you may have to. This is why some of our dashboards got a little big because they couldn't all come to consensus on that as a group what's important. So we kind of had to build out a little bit further, but we still tried to summarize it enough where it wasn't obviously overwhelming and then useless again. So
yeah. Yeah, and that's a great point. And I think every project, the metrics that matter are going to be different. And it's very tempting for project managers to just say, well, let's just use the dashboard or the framework we use for project X and just apply it to project Y. But the reality is they're going to be very, very different, and what worked for one project won't work for another.
Exactly.
So honing in on those key sort of few metrics that matter. What do people really care about? What's going to help them make the best decisions? And then presenting that in a way that's easy to digest makes a lot of sense.
Yep, that's it.
Cool, awesome. So I wanted to touch on this concept of the Center of Excellence, Paul, which I know you've written about this topic before, and it's no secret to the listeners who are, our listeners, that innovation within large organizations faces a lot of challenges, be they short-term metrics, lack of alignment to the corporate strategy, no processes, values, systems in place to really support risk-taking, moving quickly, experimentation, no process or culture of celebrating small failures as a mechanism to learn, etc., etc. And you've talked about this concept of the Center of Excellence. Can you perhaps just start off by telling us what the Center of Excellence is?
Yeah, exactly. So in my world, I'm used to a group like a project management office, which can be in any number of formats. But in the innovation management space, especially in a lot of organizations, just having a defined department that works on innovation is a miracle in and of itself. So having an office like a project management office focused on nothing but innovation or strategic execution or helping the executives get to their strategy, those are all things that really weren't in the early parts of organizations starting to build an innovation management discipline. There was no single head. It was really, R&D can do it, or marketing's going to take that one, or sales will take this. So in my world, it was sort of bringing the project management office concept to the innovation management space. And I've seen a lot of organizations, when they need to focus on a specific area, set up what's called a Center of Excellence. And they can take a few different forms. One is really more of a, hey, we're here to kind of coach you. We're going to help you facilitate idea generation sessions. We'll help you collate all that data and kick it back out to you. We found a few templates that you might be able to use. So it's almost like a coaching, mentoring relationship. Others are on the far other side of that spectrum where, hey, we are the group that you come to kick off a new, if you have an idea, it's coming through us because we own the idea management system. We have the methodology and the tools and the templates that we need you to use because we're trying to be consistent. We're going to do spot checks to make sure that everybody's kind of doing it the same way, and so that those are the two ends of the spectrum. And then there's sort of a middle group where it's kind of a loose collection of maybe the innovation point people from every department in the organization, and they all get together on occasion and they share best practices and they share status updates of what everybody else is doing, and they can learn from each other. So, whatever works best for your organization and the actual goal of what innovation truly means for you is really is kind of how you're going to structure it, at least from an operational perspective. But the concept is really larger than operations. It's let's put together a team dedicated to the idea of let's do something with the ideas we get in our organization. Let's build a strategy that moves us to the future. Let's have somebody focusing on that, making sure that projects get spun up and that the benefits are realized. And because if you don't dedicate people to it, it just sort of lingers and kind of dies on the vine. So the whole concept of the Center of Excellence, regardless of operationally how you structure it and what they're responsible for, the idea there is let's have a group dedicated to it. And even to the point where maybe they get their own budget, maybe they even have profit P&L responsibility. They have to earn their keep. They have to come up with ideas. They have to prototype those ideas. They have to get those ideas in the pipeline, and we have to make money on those ideas. And that's the budget that they accumulate to keep themselves alive. I've seen companies do that to kind of have them earn their keep. So. Again, it's really just to make sure we've got the discipline and the rigor and the people, and they're dedicated, and this isn't going to be a flavor of the month thing. This is truly a part of the organization, a part of who we are.
And would you say that the innovation, the center of excellence or this dedicated innovation team should be in some way integrated into the rest of the organization. I mean, we've heard a lot of people say that innovation is everyone's job, and there may be a risk that if we have this team that people will say, well, look, it's not my job, that's the innovation management team's job, so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, there's arguments on both sides. To say innovation's everybody's job means that nobody actually has innovation as part of their job. And you see that a lot, unfortunately. And unless there's so that's where sort of the center of excellence structure actually works, because if you do have an idea, you know the process, you know the place to go to get the help that you need, and especially if you market that group effectively, and they're constantly, challenging. There's corporate challenges around certain ideas or certain promising things that the organization wants to do. That's where that group is. But the flip side is you also don't want all the idea people. Often some skunk works. And if they do happen to come up with a good idea, the integration of that idea back into the real organization is going to be met with a lot of resistance because, hey, who do you guys think you are? You're so special. You don't have day jobs, and why are you coming to me with this? I wasn't part of the decision. So there are risks on both sides, and so really what I've found to be effective is again, it's you find the people who are passionate about the specific areas, either for the company as a whole or their specific sort of vertical inside the organization, who are naturally innovative, natural problem solvers, natural problem seekers, and make those people sort of the innovation lead for your group, for an innovation lead for marketing, innovation lead for IT, for finance. And then, have those people meet on occasion and have them mix and mingle and bounce those ideas off and have the ideas kind of combined together. That is something, because now you're really getting a flavor of each part of the organization overall. And so let's say I'm a frontline person working on the phones in front of my customers, and I have a brilliant idea. Well, now I have a point person I know in my own department that I can go talk to, and that person can be my champion so that I can be at my day job still. But this person's going to champion my idea, and he's going to mingle it with the other part of the organization. That's the kind of structure that I've seen be the most successful, because now you don't have somebody singularly being responsible for all the ideas, and you don't necessarily have to rely on innovation being part of everybody's job, because we just know that that's just not going to happen. So that sort of point person, that innovation council, I've heard a few different kind of flavors of this, but it seems to be the one that is the most sustainable.
Right. And now that makes sense. And I think innovation champions is another one that's thrown around a lot. And I guess, do you have any thoughts on how you best identify those people? I know you mentioned, you look for people that are passionate about their area or people that have that natural entrepreneurial flair, but how do you identify them, say, in an organization of tens of thousands of people with maybe 50 to 100 business units?
Yeah, it's the bigger the company, obviously, the more difficult it gets. But usually, and I'll be honest, in my experience, I've had no trouble finding them because they come to you. They are the ones that are constantly bringing the ideas forward. They're the ones that are challenging the status quo. They're the ones that sometimes are a pain in the butt and the managers don't know what to do with, right? So usually, if you question middle management type people of, hey, give me some names of some people who are passionate about what we do and are constantly trying to say we could do it better, they've got a short list, because those are they're constantly being bombarded by those people, because it's hard to be a passionate innovator, entrepreneur, and stay quiet. It's just not who they are. Even if they're introverts, it's even hard, because once you become passionate about an idea, or even if it's like a process fix, you work so hard to try to bring that thing into reality, and it's almost impossible for them to stay quiet. So they almost self-identify. But again, the larger the organization, there's going to be a lot of them, and so now you have to decide, okay, who do we want on the team? Maybe rotate some of the people on and off the council, things like that. But I'll be honest, I've never had much trouble finding them, because they're knocking on the door wanting to participate.
Would you be looking for any particular cross-functional sort of skills in the innovation team, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a big fan of the dreamer-doer concept. You want the people, you want a broad mix of people, especially the people who tend to be the idea people, but they're not all that great of following through. They have an idea and they sort of see it through, and then they drop it because the next shiny idea came. That's okay. I'm great with that, because now I can probably match somebody up with that person who's more of a, hey, I can take that idea and run with it. But I struggle when we go to brainstorming things. I usually come up with one or two things, and people are writing pages worth of ideas, and my Post-it note is still 3 inches thick. My stack is, I don't have any ideas. You put two of those two people together, and that's when the sparks fly. That's when the magic really happens. And then if there are other personality types, the organizers, the people who go looking for problems, you start to have that broad mix, that broad spectrum of different personality types. And they all have to get along, to really be an effective team. And so you want to make sure there's some good interpersonal behavior type things you look for. But again, people are kind of who they are. And if you mix up people and you let them be good at their strength, and you pair them up with somebody who maybe their weakness, that's where where all that stuff kind of happens.
Yeah, and that's I think quite symptomatic of standard sort of evolution of an entrepreneur, right? Initially, they get all excited about an idea, a new shiny thing, start chasing it down the rabbit hole, that type of thing. And if they chase that down the rabbit hole and find some gold, then they will start building a factory and whatnot, and start putting in processes and whatnot, and then they get quite bored and they start looking for the next shiny thing. And that's when you need, it's that transition from the dreamer to the doer.
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic. I guess I just wanted to touch on innovation metrics as well. And this is a topic that I guess many struggle with when it comes to corporate innovation, particularly when we're shrouded in, traditional financial metrics, accounting metrics, management accounting metrics, not net present value, IRR, return on investment, all that sort of stuff. And it's very hard for senior executives to step out of that way of thinking, particularly if they're listed companies and they've got short-term metrics to deal with. But it comes back, I think, to a lot of what you were saying earlier about, okay, we've got our incremental innovation, keeping the lights on and that sort of thing, and then you've got your breakthrough innovation. And they call for two different sets of metrics. We measure success differently. So I know you've done some work in this space. Do you care to elaborate on some of your thoughts on this?
Sure. Yeah, it is a difficult thing, and I think the profession as a whole has had a hard time putting their finger on how do you measure innovation? How do you measure somebody's ability to come up with new ideas and get them to the point where it's valuable to somebody? And we've borrowed some from, you're right, from finance. We've borrowed some from marketing and sales. We borrowed some from old kind of R&D kind of definitions. And I really think that a lot of it is about, you have to almost break it down into each segment of what we would call an end-to-end innovation management process. So you have to come up with some metrics of how many ideas are we getting, and then what's the rate of time it takes for an idea to get through our system? How many ideas make it to prototype stage? So now you're measuring those things at sort of the front end of how effective are we at generating ideas, and then once we generate those ideas, how effective are we at moving them through a particular process? Then you start thinking about, okay, the next stage of the process where, okay, now we're prototyping, we're testing, we may be bringing our customer groups in to help us understand what's good, what's bad. Now we have a different set of metrics about cost of what's our cost to develop a prototype, what's our pipeline process flow timing in this stage, what are our customer approval metrics, or so those are the kind of things that's sort of in that mid stage where we're kind of slogging through and kind of refining the idea. And then you really are into sort of that execution part where some of the standard metrics do apply. What's my payback? What's my return? What's my benefit period? Those kind of things. And then some of the things that we've done in the profession that are a little bit new are things like you can measure your strategy by, let's say you have an innovation strategy, and one of the things you want to understand is what is the perception of our new products and or services that we've developed through our innovation process? What is the profitability of our innovation team? I mean, our innovation team is working on focused on generating those ideas, building new prototypes, getting them out. There's a cost overall for that team. Of the products that have come out of that team, what is the payback on it? What is that kind of ratio?
Sure.
Again, portfolio balance is a metric.
Yes.
As a company, we decide we're going to be 30% of our effort is going to go towards the future. Okay, I can measure that now because based on the investments we make in our innovation or project portfolio, are we actually spending 30% of our money there? So. Again, there's a list. I have a list on my website, and it's an amalgamation of lists that I've seen in other places of things that are specific to innovation, but you're going to still see a heavy flavor of finance and marketing and sales and R&D type things because what we're doing is managing a process, and each part of that process actually does touch all of those areas, and that's why some of those metrics actually are probably applicable.
Yeah.
But we've tried to work on some just truly innovation, strategic, processy kinds of things, and we've come up with some, but I think this is a thing that'll morph over time. Again, here's another one: strategic alliances. How many strategic alliances did we want to have, and how many do we have? Or, we wanted to have so many team champions that are innovation champions. How are we there? How are we doing with that? And just those kind of things. You have to be almost innovative to come up with some innovative type, points that you want to data points you want to measure.
Yeah, and every organization is different, right? So
absolutely, absolutely. They'll put more weight on certain things, and other companies will say, "Well, I don't care to measure that." So, if you have a list to choose from, and some of them are more applicable to others, that's kind of what we as professionals in the industry are working on. Is here's a long list of things you could potentially choose from, depending on what's important to you. Maybe some of these may apply.
Makes sense. And I like what you mentioned earlier about the different metrics at different stages of the innovation lifecycle. It ties in very closely with a conversation I had with someone called Ben Yoskovitz recently, who wrote a book called Lean Analytics. And he was talking about the lean startup approach to finding product market fit, where initially you're going to test customer need, then you're going to validate the problem, then the solution, then the business model, then the features, and you're going to have different key metrics at each part of that funnel. It's not like you're going to have the same 10 or 20 metrics across the entire thing.
Absolutely. And again, when we're like what we do, process focused, and our process is rather lengthy, you're going to pick up and drop different variables and metrics along the way, and you really have to be able to have those measures kind of not flow with you, but you pick up the ones that are appropriate for the stage that you're in.
Makes sense, and I think that's probably what people struggle with, because we're coming out of this environment of, MBAs, and here's your framework, and here's the approach to take, and when it comes to innovation, it simply doesn't work that way.
Right. You have to think about it, and it's not handed to you as a template. You have to think of it for yourself, which is, again, part of what we do.
Yep, exactly. Okay, Paul, so I'm going to get into the I suppose the more fun and more informal part of the podcast, where I ask you two questions, or actually I ask you three questions, two hypotheticals, and one on lifestyle design. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. Okay, so the first one is, if you could work for any company at any stage of the company life cycle, who would it be and why?
I would love to be an Imagineer for the Walt Disney Company, because I have been a lifelong Disney fan. Not so much, the film, but the theme park area. And what Imagineers do is they basically are the blue sky thinkers for their attractions and their amusement parks. And to me, that would be the ultimate job. Would be just be a blue sky thinker and an attention to detail kind of person for the Walt Disney Company as they build out their theme parks with new attractions and new offerings and new hotels and new cool stuff. So that would be the ultimate gig for me.
Yep. No, I was lucky enough to head down to Disneyland when I was 13 years old, and I think up until this day it just has this I don't know, just this ability to recreate that magic day after day. And was reading it's amazing. I was reading a book called Scaling Up Excellence, and where they talk about the fact that everyone from the janitors up to your senior managers, if they spot one person looking somewhat unhappy in the entire park, they will, literally approach that person, pull them aside, mitigate any effect of that person's, unhappiness on other people in the park, and try and cheer them up, find out what's happening. And in addition to that, you never see one piece of rubbish anywhere in the park. It's like constantly clean. Everyone's happy.
It's beautiful. It's amazing. And the thing that really always strikes me when I go there is that they take you to a place that is real because you're there, but it's not real in the sense that it's not the real world. And they thematically immerse you into these environments, and they think of absolutely everything down to the last detail. And when you stop and look at what they've done to recreate this environment for you, you think, wow, somebody had to think of this. Somebody had to go search the globe for this particular antique or thing that's part of this scene. And to me, that's a pretty neat job.
Oh yeah, sounds like a lot of fun to me. Let's move on to the second question, Paul. So this one is, if you could ask anyone a question, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you ask?
Wow, that is a...
It's always, always gets people stumped.
Yeah, I guess I think it probably would be Walt Disney. Obviously he's dead, but to just ask him questions about his philosophy, his dedication to the customer experience, his understanding of the innovation process, and that while the business may dictate you make money, what's most important is the story and the thematic experience. And how the heck did he make that work? To pick the brain of a genius like that would be very interesting to understand.
Definitely, couldn't agree more. And finally, you've published a few books. You're doing cool things with your consultancy, Think for a Change. You run the Innovation Management Group on LinkedIn, which now boasts over 30,000 members. What I like to ask people is, do you have any rituals or routines that help you stay on top of your game?
I dedicate time every day, two specific windows of time every day. One is to check my LinkedIn and my Twitter accounts, and not to see if people are following me or anything like that, but to see what others are contributing, so that I can glean some of that information in a dedicated time, so that I don't miss it during the day. The second is I also dedicated a period of time where I am inaccessible to anybody. Sometimes that's during the business day, sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes it's in the evening. But I do basically just sit and meditate and think and let ideas process, because I know that if I don't force myself to do that, it won't happen. So I've learned that if I dedicate time to learning and feeding my brain things to think about, and then I stop and I actually think about them, I get my problems answered. I get my problems solved. And so those are the two real rituals that I really hold strict, that I hold myself to be a good problem solver, be a good innovator.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't agree more. I think shutting yourself off from the rest of the world and giving yourself some clarity goes a very long way. And you mentioned meditate. Is that more so just giving yourself your own space, or do you have a particular practice?
I don't really do the practice thing. I always find myself being easily distracted. But it is more of it's not a clear my mind. It is, I'll chase an idea or a thought until I'm done chasing it, and then I'll kind of chase the next one. I suppose for some people that truly is what they do when they meditate. I've never been able to come up with the real sort of meditative process thing. But it's more of just clearing out the noise and just letting my mind wander for a while.
Makes sense. Perfect. And where can our audience go to find out a little bit more about yourself and what you're working on, Paul?
Yeah, so they can go to www.thinkforachange, all one word, obviously, .com. There's a lot of information about myself, the history of the kind of the progression of my career, kind of the services and things that we offer as part of the consultancy. And then again, one of the things I kind of pride myself on is that people consider me a thought leader in this space, and I really think that as thought leaders, especially in the innovation management world where we're all kind of learning from each other, it's good to give back, especially as we develop models and ideas. And so there's a wealth of information out there, templates, tools, downloadable things, white papers, even formal reports, some of which were at one point proprietary by some of the companies that I had been working with in the past. They've now let me share. I think it's really important to give back, and so I hope people go out and use the stuff. Feel free to. I've got a lot of Creative Commons things. I don't really copyright a lot of stuff. So if you find it's important and you think it's going to work for you, please feel free to use it. If you want some help, you want to bounce an idea off me, please get in contact with me. I'd love to help.
Fantastic, Paul. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. It's been a blast. I appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my talk with Paul Williams. Don't forget, we've got a lot of other podcasts like this one, where we interviewed guys like Steve Blank, Ben Yoskovitz, Ted Rubin, Whitney Johnson, and numerous others on topics pertaining to innovation in the enterprise. You can find out more at Future².xyz. You can also follow us, share or like our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. And we would really appreciate if you took just 1 minute to do exactly that. To find out more about Collective Campus, the innovation consultancy that brings you this podcast, you can head to collectivecamp.us. Until next time, Future² out.